on Schwarzenegger. He is an embarrassment to science. He actually came out in a radio address, I believe it was last spring, and told people they should hang their clothes to air dry to save energy. The same Arnold Schwarzenegger who was commuting to work in the governor's office in a private jet had the audacity to tell Californians where he's going to be imposing huge regressive energy taxes on due to man-made global warming fears that they should be air drying their clothes. On the second point, you mentioned global government. People say, oh, well, you're a conspiracy. That's it. No, we use their own words. Al Gore in July, the U.S. climate bill will lead to global governance. Former French President Jacques Chirac, the Kyoto Protocol on global warming, the first step to an authentic global governance. Ban Ki-moon just said we need equitable global governance in the next climate bill. Those are their words, their quotes, their exact words. Timothy Wirth, the former Democrat senator from Colorado, said it best, even if we're wrong on the science of global warming, we're still doing right by policy. It's never been about the science. This is a manufactured issue all about politics and an ideology and environmental agenda. You asked me what the next eco-scare. In the first Earth Day, there were fears of global cooling. You had fears of overpopulation, resource scarcity, famine, the oceans turning into a black goo, the Amazon rainforest disappearing. Well, guess what? Right now, people sense that this issue is slipping away from them. In this year and in last year, the UK Green Party has come out and said the lack of oxygen is a more serious threat than global warming. In other words, mankind is causing the atmosphere, oxygen, to disappear from the atmosphere. They're already test marketing the next eco-scare. More to the point, Lori David, Al Gore's producer, is also test marketing the next eco-scare. In the Huffington Post a couple months ago, she wrote, she was presenting information that plastic waste is now in some ways more alarming than man-made global warming. They sense it. They're afraid. Today, on Climate Depot, my website, the head of the UN climate panel, Rajendra Pachauri, who, by the way, I debated at a UN conference in 2006 in Kenya and was so sure of himself that every scientist agreed with him, he is now saying that sustainable living is a, quote, larger problem than man-made global warming.
All right, let me stop you.
The head of the UN is now throwing global warming under the bus. That's how bad it's become for them.
All right, let me throw this out. You didn't mention, because there's so many, last week the new EU President Von Rompuy, and we have the clip. In fact, cue it up if we have time. We'll see if we hold over one more second. We probably have to go get that plane. Von Rompuy said the key to world government is the Copenhagen global tax to have global governance. So they're admitting that the heart of their global government tax to these EU bureaucrats and to the Madoffs and to the Ken Lays and the Al Gores and the George Soroses, who all own the climate trading companies, they're admitting that the heart of their takeover is this system. And it's just amazing to see this happening and amazing to see this coming out in the open. You say there's a rout happening. I agree, as even the big socialist Monbiot in England, the big cause celeb socialist, comes out and says, okay, we got to back away from this. As it implodes, shouldn't we see criminal investigations? Because this is a group trying to cut off resources, trying to, quote, bankrupt the coal companies that would double power prices conservatively in the U.S., as you know, 51% of our power from coal. This is a group that would impoverish and hurt our poorest people, that it would destroy. Top scientists have said it would kill at least 1 billion people in the next decade in the third world if this was implemented. These are real numbers. Isn't this genocide? We have John P. Holdren writing Eco-Science, the textbook, calling for world population reduction, one-child policies, a planetary regime to enforce it. And now it's come out in the Canadian Free Press. They read the emails. John P. Holdren, White House science czar, is in there saying, ladies and gentlemen, that they need to basically persecute and make fun of people and to shut down debate. So the White House science czar is involved in this. What's your take on that?
Yes, it's the same White House science czar who in 1971 warned of man-made global cooling. John Holdren, I mean, it's amazing that these people get respect. Obama has Energy Secretary Chu, who actually says science is speaking in his ear, and it's the first time in human history that science tells them for certain what the future will be like 100 years from now. Well, Mr. Energy Secretary Chu, you should have a deck of tarot cards on a boardwalk dispensing such nonsense. It does not surprise me at all. These are committed ideological believers in a political movement. And just so your listeners think that this science, I mean, here's Reed Bryson, the father of climatology, who just died last year, was active to the day he died, said you could go outside and spit and have the same effect as doubling CO2 in the atmosphere. And what we're finding in the peer-reviewed studies, in the real-world data analysis, away from the cloistered world of the UN, is that there are hundreds of factors influencing global climate. Everything from tilt of the Earth's axis to clouds, to volcanic eruptions, to water,
the sun,
vapor, to methane, ocean cycles, the sun, the solar system. To sit there and say it's a single trace essential gas in the atmosphere that we exhale from our mouth that's driving climate is now laughable, even in the scientific community, with peer-reviewed studies showing that CO2 is one factor out of hundreds, and that you can't even distinguish the impact of rising CO2 from natural variability. So the bottom line is these computer models that you'll hear about, oh, this could happen, this might happen. Ivy League scientists reviewed this, the premier forecasting expert, Scott Armstrong, and said these climate models used by the UN violate the basic principles of forecasting.
But Mark, as you know, it's not just the internal emails saying persecute other scientists, get their funding cut, which is racketeering. It's not just how they admit in the emails they're manipulating the data and the world's really getting colder. Now the actual code has code messages to programmers saying, here's how you cook the data. The very code. Programmers have now gone in to the code that was leaked. It's written for fraud. They're caught red-handed.
What they're finding, and this is a quote from my website, the data handling that the UN was relying on was, quote, completely out of control. Quote, they fudged so much that nothing that came out had any believability. They talk openly about using tricks and statistical things and manipulating data. This is just beginning. This is the death of 1,000 cuts. This was the carcass, man-made global warming, that was already dead before this scandal.
But there are other hoaxes they got away with. Will they get away with this hoax, or will it finally fully bring them down?
No, they will not get away with it. I'll tell you what, this is like the end of every Scooby-Doo episode. After being needlessly scared by ghosts and goblins, they pull the mask off. They see who the man behind the curtain was, and he always inevitably says, I would have got away with it without you meddling kids. Well, the UN is probably saying right now, we would have got away with it without those meddling skeptics.
Mark, stay there. I want to say something to you during the break. Stay there. We'll be right back.